The second thing is, it got to a point where the investors began to realize that we actually borrowed a lot of money. I mean, for a small, medium-sized country with a GDP, maybe, you know, around the $60 billion mark at some point, now maybe 70 billion. To borrow so much money, there must be some difficulty in paying back at some point. So they started to charge us very high amounts, or at the very least, and here it gets a bit complex, I'm not going to go into it too much. When the person who lent the money to you try to sell it on to someone, the person buying it has a strong feel that you may not pay. You, the original debtor, may not pay, and therefore they want a big discount. That gives you an idea of the current price of the debt. I know I'm making things a bit disorganized, but you follow me. The idea is that I pay you money, I lend you money. The person that did the lending of the money gets a right to transfer that right to collect the money back to somebody else. But in transferring it, or what we call selling the bond on, that other person has to make a decision as to the likelihood that the original lender will pay. And so if they think you are not going to pay, they discount how much they buy. So if I give you 100 million, right? And then you decide that, okay, I'm going to pass it on to someone else because I can't wait till you pay me back. So that's what is called selling the bond on. So you've sold the bond. But I think, no, this 100 million is not going to come back. So instead of giving you, let's say, 90 million so that I'll get 10 million as my profit, I say, no, I'll give you 60 million instead for the 100 million that you lend to this person. That is essentially what we call yields. I'm supremely simplifying, but just so we can have a conversation. So the yield on our debt, it got to a point where the yield on our debt was the highest in Africa, as you can see. You know, and the way this works is that normally you compare the yield to another country that is considered very safe. Usually the American government or the German government. So if the German government borrows money at a certain rate, then you look at how much we borrow money at, and you take the difference, it gives you an idea of what the investors perceive as the level of our risk. How more riskier are we than the German or the American government? So that difference, which we call the spread, gives an idea of how risky it is to lend to you as Ghana. And if you look here, you can see that in 2020, June, the average rate around that time was that 22% more, you get 22% more lending to Ghana than lend to the American or the German government, roughly speaking. So essentially, if you borrow at 5% and you are a big company in Ghana and you are trusted, and somebody else goes to borrow from the same bank, and that bank says, I'll give you 27% because I don't trust you. That difference is an indication of how less I trust that you pay back versus the other person. So this is similar. They will trust the German and the American government more than they trust us, but it changes. As you can see, it was not like that a year before. A year before, they were happy to do with about 8% spread or 8.5% spread, and then in just another year, it moved up very significantly. But the most important point is that Ghana was paying more for debt in that sense. Remember that we've already borrowed the money. It's the people that are now holding that debt who are suffering. That notwithstanding is the best measure of what we will get today if we try to borrow. Because if the other people who took the debt off our hands are getting these rates, then if we went into the market today, we are likely to get something like that. So even though this is not what we are paying, it's the best way you measure what we will be paying if we are borrowing today. So if we are borrowing today, we're paying in the excess of maybe 20-something%. That doesn't make sense. No government will go into the international market to borrow at 20%. So that's what we mean when we say we've been shut out from the international capital markets, in very simple terms. And the most important thing to note from this slide is that compared to other African countries, Ghana is doing very badly in that regard. They don't think we will pay back.